This is the March 30th, 2020 meeting of the Porter County Board of Elections and Registration.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you, Jessica and Kurt, for putting this electronic meeting together for us. This will be our first time in using this technology, so let's hope all goes well. We can begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call of officers, please.
Board President Roush,
Here.
Vice President Lowe,
Present.
Board Member Chittister,
here.
Board Member Bangs,
Here.
and Secretary Jessica Bailey here.
All right, thank you. The next piece of business on the agenda is approval of the February 18th meeting minutes. Do we have any discussion or comments?
Mr. Chairman, this is Jeff Chittister. I think we needed to find a second for that previous month's minutes. And then other than that, I'd make the motion, and once it's figured out, to approve the minutes as amended.
We have a motion. Any further questions or comments? We need to find a second on some of these comments and motions. If we can do that, Mr. Chittister has moved that we accept the minutes as written. We have a second.
This is Ethan. I'll be the second.
All in favor, please, by roll call.
President Roush,
Approved.
Vice President Lowe,
Approved.
Board Member Chittister,
Approved.
Board Member Bangs,
Approved.
Secretary Bailey approved.
All right. Next on the agenda, clerk's report, please.
This month for the clerk's report, I just wanted to keep it pretty simple. As you all know, the primary election date has now been moved to June 2nd. Just in case you weren't aware, the election staff has been placed on reduced staff. What that looks like is Sunday has half the staff on her team, and they are working the afternoon of Wednesday, all day Thursday, all day Friday. And then Becky is taking the other half of the staff, and they are working Monday, Tuesday, and the first half of Wednesday. This was done in case anyone in the office is exposed to the COVID-19 virus or has a fever, and that happens. If they're off, then that whole staff is off until we know where everybody's at health-wise. And that means the office can still remain working with the other half of the staff. Both directors are available from home on their days off, or not on their days off, but on their days when they work from home. And then the other big piece that we have is we have received verbal or email approval from both of the chairmen to allow us to deliver the election day equipment using the highway department as we've done in the past, instead of doing the bipartisan teams. And as soon as we're able to meet face to face with both chairmen, we'll get the appropriate paperwork signed, but we do have confirmation from both. And that's all I have for my report this month.
Questions or comments for the clerk and her report? Hearing none, I'll motion to accept the clerk's report as given. Do we have a second?
Jeff
This is
Chittister,
Ethan. I'll
second.
second that motion.
Roll call of the vote, please.
President Roush,
Accept,
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
all right, next to the agenda would be the director's report, please.
Okay, I'm gonna go first and then Becky's gonna talk about some stuff. I'm just gonna talk about some absentees. For our absentee applications, we've had almost 2,000 applications come in so far. 90% of those have been since the second week of March. Since this kind of all began, so the girls in the office have really been working their butts off. We've received about half of those applications back, so about 1,000 ballots have been issued so far. We're expecting, of course, more to keep coming as this quarantine continues on. So we've been, of course, ordering more supplies and just keeping everything stocked up and ready in case we get stuck inside for a little bit longer. So that's all I have. You're up, Becky.
Okay. Some things that we've been working on, we've been contacting all the election day polling locations to make sure that they're okay with the date change. We've contacted the early voting workers and locations. We're scheduling poll worker classes, the truck rentals and the highway department deliveries are all set to switch to this new date as well. So that's just some of the other things we've been working on. I think that's about all I have.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments for either directors? Hearing none, I will motion to accept their reports as given. We have a second.
I'll second the motion, Board Member Bangs.
All in favor by roll call, please.
President Roush,
Accept,
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
all right, we'll move to new business. First piece is resolution of inspector pay as amended.
Yes, and the second paragraph of the resolution that was passed at the last board meeting, the number should read 4,499, not 4,449. So it was just that one typo that we needed to address.
Questions or comments? Motion to accept the revised resolution.
Jeff Chittister, motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Ethan Lowe, I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Roll call by voice, please.
President Roush,
Accept,
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
okay, discussion on mobile vote locations and hours.
We received the mobile voting van last Friday and it is all set up as far as the decals and everything are concerned. And so the one last piece of the early voting that we needed to address were going to be the hours and dates of the mobile voting. The recommendation is for the Saturday locations, which we're proposing be May 16th at Couts Library, May 23rd at South Haven Library, and May 30th to be announced in Burns Harbor. We can vote on that one in April. Have the hours be 10 a.m. until 2 p.m. And then for the days of the week, the Wednesdays that they go off which would be May 13th at Jamestown Apartments in Valpo, and then May 22nd at Oak Tree Village in Westchester. And both of those hours to be 4 to 7 p.m.
Questions or comments by the board? Hearing none, I'll motion to accept as proposed. Do I have a second?
This is
Board
Ethan.
Member
I'll second
Singleton,
that motion.
Roll call by voice, please.
President Roush,
Accept.
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
Okay, the 2020 primary update.
The 2020 primary is changing daily, but given the last bit of information that we've received from the Indiana Election Division and the Secretary of State, again, the new primary date is June 2nd. And so that's currently moving the calendar forward 28 days. That means that early vote will be open on May 5th, and that voter registration will end on May 4th. Those are the big dates that we're having right now. The commission will meet again on April 22nd if there's anything to go. But right now we are planning to have an in-person early vote as well as the absentee early vote and election day in-person voting. We are preparing just in case we end up going to an absentee by mail only early vote. Across the state, that seems to be something that is being questioned, especially with the rate that the stay in place goes on longer, but we're planning both ways just to be prepared. We have worked with the facilities department and the health department in seeing what types of precautions that we can make. We've ordered gloves, we've ordered cleaner and sanitizer and cloth to go with that. We have please stand here signs that we would measure 6 feet away from each individual person. It'll make the lines longer, but it'll keep people 6 feet away from each other as being recommended. And then we are also looking at the idea of hiring, for lack of a better term, a traffic control person. And this person, after the please stand here signs are full, would ask people to stay in their cars. And then as one spot opens up, just like they're doing in many doctors' offices, the person that arrives next will be able to stand in line. Again, it wouldn't technically make the time that you're in line any longer. It's just making it so that they're more spread out. We have a strong campaign going on social media right now for absentee by mail. We're trying to make sure that everybody is aware that for primary 2020, we have a no fault absentee. That means they don't have to check any of those boxes. There was a lot of gray area. A lot of people were concerned about whether or not they qualified for any of those. So with the Indiana Election Commission and the Secretary of State waiving that, it's been very beneficial, and I think making a lot of people less apprehensive about their absentee by mail. And as the director's already mentioned, we've had an uptick within the last few weeks. One of the other changes that was made is that we are now going to be able to use 16 and 17-year-olds for absentee boards. This could be helpful as we get closer. Many of the seasoned poll workers hit the criteria for staying at home longer, whether it's their age, health condition, or something else. So this may be a viable solution in order to fill those boards if we find that difficult. Another provision that was made is that if somebody wants to hand deliver their absentee ballot, they can work with a family member or caregiver in the household That person will still need to fill out the appropriate forms, but it makes it a little bit easier for the envelope to be hand delivered. Again, that can't happen until after the county building's open. So right now we're receiving everything by mail. Those were the highlights that was going on. I emailed everybody all of the paperwork from the commission. So if anybody has any questions on that, maybe I could help answer them, but those were the big highlights.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have a question or a comment on all of those documents that Madam Clerk sent us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Jeff Chittister. Jessica, did they move the date for filling boards by the county chairs?
Yes, everything moves ahead 28 days. That should be on the calendar. I'm not sure if I attached the newest calendars. That was in a different email, but I can send that to everyone.
Okay, yeah. 'Cause I'm struggling. A lot of, like you said, you're exactly right. A lot of the poll workers are in that criteria where they've pretty much quarantined them. And some of them will say yes, and then they'll call you, they'll watch the news. They'll call back 2 days later and say, I don't think I should do this.
Right, and they're correct, with the extension of the stay in place orders and things like that, it's going to be difficult to fill these early vote boards, as well as election day boards. So our outreach program was cut short with the schools having to release for this pandemic that's going on. We were able to get out to Washington Township and to Morgan Township. But I have the paperwork together and we're going to email it to all the rest of the schools, and they're going to put it on their class management tools. Again, hoping that some of the younger demographic will be interested more so than what we expected for this year.
It looks like that date will be about May 13th, if that sounds right. Because it was April 15th. If I did a quick count, just approximate.
My laptop's downstairs, but it should be, if you can get into your email on there, it's in those calendar dates that Jessica sent. The pages, the date redid. But yeah, that would be great with all the kids being off school, if we could get even more students to fill as many boards as we can.
I think April 13th is the deadline for the election board to notify each county chairman.
I thought April 15th was the original due date of workers.
April 17th are the written recommendations for the absentee voter boards. I can email these dates again to make sure that everybody receives them. But basically, what they were telling us is everything pushes forward 28 days. Oh, the other important piece of information is that all of our forms and ballots and coding was grandfathered. So it will still all say May 5th, but it is good for the June 2nd primary. If not, it would have been a very large cost to have to get all of that recoded. So we were fortunate to not have to do that with the grandfathering of the materials.
Seems more than reasonable. Anyone else have any comments on the primary update?
And just to put it out there too, we've had a few phone calls about the campaign finance reports. Those are pushed ahead as well. Just if we want to say that on here too. They are due May 15th now for pre-primary campaign finance reports.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, next piece of business then is announcements. Our next meeting is scheduled for 4/16, if I am correct.
Yes, the next meeting is April 16th at 3 o'clock in the Commissioners' Chambers.
Okay, any upcoming deadlines that we need to be aware of?
With the change in the election schedule, I am proposing a change in the election meeting or our election board meeting schedule. Keeping the April 16th date, but then the next date would be May 1st, and that is the public test date that will be at 8 a.m. in the equipment room. So that's a change from the original calendar. And then I'm proposing to cancel the May 15th meeting. We'll no longer need that meeting as we're not certifying the election on that date. And instead having a meeting on May 21st at 3 p.m. That would give us time to meet after the campaign finance reports are due on May 15th. And then having another meeting on May 29th to handle any issues that may come up. That's just replacing. We did that earlier for the proposed May election. It would have been on April 30th, so I just moved it to May 29th. And then the new certification of the election to be on June 12th at 12 p.m. Canceling the June 18th meeting.
Does the board have any comments or questions on the newly proposed calendar of meetings?
This is Monica. I have one question about how the timeline is set out. I think, Jessica, you just laid out that the campaign finance reports will be due April let me go back to that, May the 15th, correct?
Correct, by noon.
By noon. And then we have a board meeting that is set for the following Thursday, the 21st, correct?
Yes, that's what I'm proposing.
Okay, so if we have to send any kind of notices out to folks, we'll probably need to give them more than just a week to address that, because we would not be able to handle that on the 28th necessarily. We would be, we could send out a letter to them probably the 18th. We would probably want to send out a letter like the 18th, 19th, 20th, and letting them know that they need to immediately get their campaign finance reports in, and then we'll look at whomever hasn't done it by the 21st.
Right, and then we'll have another meeting on May 29th.
Okay, and then we'll see who's still outstanding by that point in time.
Yeah, I think the meeting on the 29th was so that we had another meeting more closer to the election date in case
Correct.
anything was filed or anything. Yes.
Yep, okay, that sounds good. I think just kind of reviewing those dates in light of what we had decided at the last meeting in terms of our procedures. I think just synchronizing that a little bit and making sure folks understand that getting those campaign finance reports in on that due date is going to be important.
Agreed. Any other questions on these proposed changes to the calendar? Hearing none, I will motion to accept the calendar changes as delineated by Madam Clerk. Do I have a second?
This is Ethan. You have a second?
Roll call, please.
President Roush,
Accept.
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
All right, do we have any other business before the board today? Hearing none, I would motion for adjournment. Do I have a second?
Ethan Lowe, you have a second?
All in favor by voice vote, please?
President Roush,
Accept.
Vice President Lowe,
Accept.
Board Member Chittister,
Accept.
Board Member Bangs,
Accept.
Secretary Bailey, accept.
Thank you all.